Insurance crisis are leaving some homeowners worried about affording the price of paradise or the changes meant to help curb Florida's property insurance crisis are leaving some homeowners worried about affording the price of paradise or the price to live in paradise. As of last week, more than 1.2 million Florida homeowners have policies with the state's insurer of last resort, Citizens Property Insurance.
A law passed during last year's legislative special session, requires all Citizens residential policyholders to have flood insurance even if you are not in a flood zone. Now, some folks reached out to our in-depth reporter, Stassi Olmos, with their concerns. And this morning, Stassi explains both sides and what you need to know if Citizens is your insurance.
Changes meant to help curb Florida's property insurance crisis are leaving some homeowners worried about affording the price of paradise or the price to live in paradise. As of last week, more than 1.2 million Florida homeowners have policies with the state's insurer of last resort, Citizens Property Insurance. A
law passed during last year's legislative special session, requires all Citizens residential policyholders to have flood insurance even if you are not in a flood zone. Now, some folks reached out to our in-depth reporter, Stassi Olmos, with their concerns. And this morning, Stassi explains both sides and what you need to know if Citizens is your insurer.
This is Thomas, my tree. I've named him after a friend.
She names her trees. That's how much Mary Garst cares about her life's accomplishment, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in St. Petersburg.
I'm from St. Pete. I would love to live on the water, but I specifically chose this area because it was a non-flood zone area.
In the 6 years she's owned the home, she's been with 3 different property insurance companies, most recently with Security First.
My last insurance bill last year was $1,800.
This year, it jumped to $3,900.
And I said, that's crazy.
In September, her insurance agent got some quotes.
Edison was over $6,200. Florida Peninsula was $5,000. Citizens at that time was $23,000.
She held off and ran them again in February. Take a look at these rate increases.
Edison was $8,300. Florida Peninsula was $66,000, and then Citizens came in at $26,89.
Garst said Citizens was all she could afford. Then her agent informed her she'll soon have to get flood insurance as well.
I'm not in a flood zone. I'm on the crest of St. Petersburg. Why do I have to get flood insurance?
That's a question many Floridians are asking. It's a new requirement out of legislative special session in December with the goal of helping curb the property insurance crisis here in Florida. Senate Bill 2A requires every residential policy to have flood insurance as a condition of having coverage from Citizens. But they're implementing it in phases. For those in a FEMA flood zone, new policies had to get flood insurance by April 1st, and renewals have until July 1st. For those not in flood zones, it's January 1st of every year, depending on the value of your home, starting with those valued at $600,000 or more in 2024, $500,000 or more by 2025, $400,000 or more 2026, and by 2027, everything below. I went to Citizens to ask more about the need for supplemental flood coverage in areas not in flood zones.
Following Hurricane Ian, you saw what happened in Orlando. So many people, even in the hardest hit areas, were not in flood zones.
Looking at an analysis by CoreLogic, uninsured flood loss from Ian cost $10 to $16 billion in Florida. For many hurricane victims, claims become more complicated, involving mediation and even legal action with disputes of wind versus flood damage.
And I believe the public policy correlation there is, if you're going to be insured with the insurer of last resort in Florida, where our rates are subsidized, right, and we can assess all Floridians if we run out of money, we want to be sure people are covered in the event there was a flood in their home, so we don't have a wind versus flood argument with Citizens because of our government entity status.
I'm going from $1,800 up to $26,89. And the flood insurance would be an additional $400 to $500 on top of that.
Garst says there has to be another solution.
This is something that our governor really needs to address, and he has not addressed it to keep the pricing down.
In St. Pete, I'm in-depth reporter Stassi Olmos, ABC Action News.